Hello, dear friends. Our guest in Allat TV studio today is the esteemed Igor Mikhailovich Danilov.
Greetings.
Today, people have many questions about whether a human can become an angel, and if he can, then how. This topic has already been bothering people for thousands of years. There are a lot of misunderstandings, discrepancies, and debates on this issue even within one religion. Today we would like to ask questions about the angelic nature, about the spiritual world and the emergence of the real life in a human being, and to understand what the truth actually is and what a delusion is, and what this reality is in actual fact. I'll probably start with those misunderstandings that exist in modern society. In particular, there are statements in Christianity that directly contradict each other. Moreover, some clergymen assert quite compellingly, referring to the Holy Scriptures and teachings of the Holy Fathers. Perhaps I'll read it out loud. Some say that a human is superior to angels. I quote, "Dogmatically, according to the Creator's plan, people are superior to angels." Others say, "By the grace of God, every Christian is akin to God, and therefore he is called upon to be superior to angels if he keeps faith and fidelity to God. Therefore, a human cannot become an angel because he's already superior to an angel, according to his status. And for him to become an angel, he has to, let's say, descend,
To lower himself
to an angelic status and to serve, let's say, people.
People, of course.
Yes, but there is another version, which clergymen also talk about, and they say that a human can still become both an angel and an archangel. And not only a monk can, but also an ordinary layman. For understanding of this essence, I will read out one of the questions of laymen to a clergyman. When reading spiritual literature, and in the church as well, I often hear the story that after the creation of the invisible world by the Lord, here comes the quote that Venerable Barsinophus of Optina said, "The third part of the spirits fell away from their creator. In order to compensate for the loss, a human being was created. Now people who work for God enter the hosts of angels after their death, and depending on their merits become either just angels or archangels. This visible world will remain as long as their number increases, and then there will be the end. Who among people can get into this number? Only monks or ordinary laymen as well?" To which the clergyman answers, "You don't have to be a monk to enter the community of angels, the kingdom of heaven. It is known from the Gospel that the first inhabitant of heaven was a penitent thief, to whom the Lord said, 'Today you shall be with me in heaven.' And all this within..."
May I a little bit? I have a personal misunderstanding here. So it turns out that before the thief, after God cast Adam and Eve out of paradise for not obeying him, no one else was there. Was it empty?
Yes, so it turns out that people had no right to salvation because they had the original sin, and only Jesus sort of redeemed this original sin of people, and after that, the chance for salvation was given to people. And the first person who entered paradise was...
A criminal.
Exactly, the thief, yes. Well, so it turns out, Igor Mikhailovich, that within one religion, there are opinions and statements that directly contradict each other. Of course, it's very difficult for an ordinary person, a layman, to understand all this because even clergymen themselves are confused, frankly speaking. So we would like to make this point clear.
I'll put it simply. When people don't know what they are talking about, and they are asked questions, naturally the helpers get activated at this point, right? And demons start teaching them who angels are and how they existed. That's where a bunch of fairy tales of this sort come from. A total lack of understanding and ignorance plus pridefulness coming from Satan. Who but demons are able to persuade a person that he is superior to angels or that even God should serve him, right? Indeed, how many times have we heard in different religions from different, say, preachers or priests of one or another religion, that even gods depend on people. It is enough for a human to simply forget about God, and he ceases to exist. But people can come to an agreement and start praying to a fictional god, that is, they made him up, and they start praying to him, and that God begins to be God, while the one to whom they stop praying disappears. That's interesting.
Igor Mikhailovich, may I ask you to clarify that and comment on the statements of, let's say, people who are in the role of priests?
Actually, it would be inappropriate on my part. They're clergymen, whereas I'm an ordinary citizen, a layman, as they say. Do I have a right to comment on their words? This is inappropriate, isn't it, friends? How can I? I'm a simple man, an ordinary layman. While they are priests, they are mediators between God and a human. They know better what's going on in their heads.
But when it's a matter of people's salvation,
Overall, we can talk, but to comment on them, what for?
okay then,
We have no moral authority, right?
what can you say about the first statement that a human is superior to angels?
Well, in his fantasies, especially when a human is controlled by a demon, then of course a human exalts himself even above God, we've just mentioned it. While angels, what are angels compared to a human? Come on. After all, based on interpretations of various religions, a lot of angels are assigned to every human, as if they have nothing better to do than babysit a fantasy, which in fact doesn't even live yet, just. However, a lot of angels must be sent by God to serve a human, right? That's what happens, isn't it?
Yes, this way consciousness...
Of course, a human being is superior since they serve him. And how many times have we heard that even God ordered angels to bow before a human because he created him superior to angels? But I have a simple question. If people are superior to angels, then why are they controlled by demons? Right? That's interesting. And another thing, why does every person feel that he should become an angel? Everyone, even an atheist, he understands that he's here for a reason, and that which comes from personality comes from inside. That precisely pushes him towards self-knowledge in the spiritual aspect. Surely there is consciousness, concerns, and a lot of problems. There's no time for that, pridefulness. These are also such nice words which say that if a human becomes an angel, he will become inferior to a human and he will have to serve other humans. Well, that's disarming too. Somehow a person doesn't want to be an angel anymore. That's an interesting situation.
And what about
Fantasizers.
the beliefs that a human cannot become an angel? After all, people often encounter this statement as well.
Of course he cannot. It's not ordained that a human becomes an angel. And that is true. But only if he is controlled by demons. If he serves the devil. How can the dead become alive? A simple question. Can a dead man become alive? He cannot. And the one who serves the devil has deliberately given his life to his demons, and they live instead of him. So how can he become an angel? Right?
Yes.
From this perspective, that's how it turns out to be. A human, let's say, who is taking this position, he actually feels yearning inside. It gnaws at him because he's called upon to become alive, to become an angel. That's why he exists here. There is nothing else, no other conditions or anything else, no other callings. The only purpose of a human, for which he is here, is to become an angel. That's what humankind is needed for. There are no other conditions. Everything else is earthly affairs, fictions, and the consumerist format.
It's interesting that when you hear people's answers to the question, what do you think, can a person become an angel? Such as, probably not, he cannot, and that probably one life will not be enough. You can see how this answer saddens people themselves, and how they themselves somehow inwardly disagree with the belief they are talking about.
Yet who is speaking in them? And why do people say so? First of all, due to earthly attachments, they understand that in order to become an angel, one must start living. And in order to start living, one must get away from this vanity. It doesn't mean to abandon, go somewhere, and become a hermit. We've talked about it with you, and more than once. It means you must live by your conscience, live honestly and freely. But inside such people, there are those who are against this, precisely the animal component of a human. That's what confuses everything. It invents everything to create life here, an illusion of life here. Thus we trade the eternal for the earthly and temporary. We choose the illusion instead of life. Unfortunately, for the most part, this is so. So if we look at the history of humankind, I mean modern history, starting with Sumerians, the last 6,000 years, it's actually a nightmare. They twisted and perverted it, all to such an extent, made up fairy tales. Moreover, such fairy tales that even children won't believe them. Nevertheless, they force their believers to believe in all this. That angels fell and the like, well, isn't that... It's ridiculous, to be honest.
Yet, how is it in reality? After all, there is actually a category of angels, the fallen angels.
There is no category of fallen angels. Well, how can an angel fall? Well, this is unrealistic. In general, we need to understand where it came from, how it started, and why it was all shaped in such a form. Why people came up with the idea that there were fallen angels. A whole 1/3, yes? Who fell, can you imagine?
Yes.
1/3 of angels. And where did they come to? To the material world. Guys, may I put it simply in the language of ordinary math and physics? Imagine 1/3 of infinity. And it came to the material world. To what world? After all, those who interpreted it, they merely referred to Earth. They didn't even know about the existence of, excuse me, even galaxies, let alone the universe. And not to mention the fact that there are lots of universes. Because they didn't even understand that, they were just thinking about Earth. And in what categories did they think? They made up that there were 400 angels in God's army, or some more, allegedly, they made up different numbers. Then they decided that there is a certain army, a certain number of thousands of angels, and 1/3 of them fell, and then they came to Earth and the like. That's what they made up, because they were so far from God, farther than demons, because they served demons. So, judging by their interpretation and the reality, this is getting ridiculous. If we take all the universes together, all material worlds, and take 1/3 of angels, it is not comparable. You see, it's impossible to squeeze them into all this. Simply impossible. Even the tiniest part of them, it won't work. Just for you to understand, even if we compress all this to the utmost, as our physicists say, the entire matter converged to a point and the like, okay? If we compress angels to the maximum density, 1/3 of angels, well, we don't have such numbers to indicate by how many times they will exceed the entire material world in their density, if we speak the language of density of physics and so on. If we take the largest number and raise it to the largest power, well, the largest number that we can think of, it will be nothing compared to the reality. Because it's impossible to measure this, and it's impossible to understand it. Yet it turns out that people with their primitive mind, which, well, based on Darwin's theory, I have to agree with Darwin that a part of people have indeed originated as Darwin explained, these fantasizers. It is them who make up such things. And do you know what all this is invented for? Everything that was made up, all their angelology, the teaching about angels and the like, was invented to manipulate other people's consciousness and just profit from that. Because everything has boiled down to one banal and simple thing. The entire teaching about angels consists in the point that there are some mediators, some people who can control these angels by means of spells. I emphasize spells, meaning magic. They can force them, let's say, to overcome evil forces and help people. So tritely, a person comes and says, I have a problem. And these priest mediators, these fantasizers say, you know, pay us. We will put to work one angel or another. They have actually made up tasks for every angel. One is milking cows, another one is curing sheep, and so on. I'm not exaggerating. It almost comes to that. All that remains is to force angels to clean manure after their cattle. They somehow didn't think that far. Well, this is too material and obvious, right? A person has come and paid, a priest. He has come home, but the manure is still there. Angels haven't cleaned it. How can this priest weasel out of it then? While in that, which you cannot see and cannot touch, that's where they made things up. Just business, a consumerist format. It's a decline of humanity below the lowest point, when they encroach on the holy and exalted themselves higher. Well, you see, after every surge of fantasies and foolishness like that, prophets came and brought the truth. Well, those ones still altered it all. For what purpose? They just profited from that. Didn't they? There is a frequently asked question. Which religion is truly from God, right? You've heard this, haven't you?
Yes.
Do you know what's the answer?
What is it?
None. There is no religion sent by God. Not a single one. The Lord sent the teaching, while demons transformed it into religion and made people worship their fantasies. And there's no religion that doesn't use magic. And there's no religion in which magic is prohibited. That's the paradox. I don't have anything against religions, honestly. We're just telling the truth. The way it is.
Igor Mikhailovich, you also spoke about the angels' names. Indeed, if we look at, let's say, Christian angelology, that is, angels and archangels have names, Gabriel, Michael. There is also a gradation, let's say, of angels, and a hierarchy of angels. These are angels, archangels.
Of course.
And it's the same in Islam. There are 2-winged,
Everywhere.
3-winged, 600-winged ones. So people ask a question. It means that angels are not equal. That is there some kind of an angelic hierarchy in the spiritual world?
Hierarchy exists here. Well, this is called reverse fractals. That is, the devil copies something and always remakes it for his own benefit. Thus, people turn out to be, let's say, fallen. Not angels, I emphasize, but fallen people who bowed before the devil, before his material temptations. It's they who start this, while conscious torments, right? And so they start remaking everything for their own benefit. Why? Because if they put themselves as mediators between God and a human, and say that they are closer to God, otherwise how will they help other people? In no way. They have to be closer than the one who has come to them, so that he pays for their help, right? Such sort of mediation. And they have a hierarchy. How can it be otherwise? It's an organization. It's a well-established business, fine-tuned over the centuries. How to justify it? Well, the only thing which remains is to explain that it's the same in the spiritual world. Among angels too, there are superior and inferior ones, and so we are like them. So everything is sort of honest. The only thing is that there are no ranks among angels. There is responsibility, but there are no ranks. While they attribute this like putting on shoulder straps, there are 2 wings, 3 wings.
By the way, they also say...
At least it's not 3 feathers, but just 3 wings.
They also talk about why there are wings, that they symbolize the speed of an angel's service in the execution of God's will.
This is ignorance. It just shows the backwardness of those who invented it. They look, where are angels? Sitting in heaven on a cloud, or hiding behind the clouds. And who flies? Birds fly, and they have wings. In order to fly, you need wings, and so on. Well, it's a banal misunderstanding. After all, in space, even wings will be pointless. One day. In space, whether you flap your wings or not, you won't move anywhere. There's no atmosphere there. And it turns out that angels, in their understanding, live somewhere in the atmosphere, right? Well, it's their fantasy, and then they say angels are incorporeal. If they are incorporeal, why do they need wings? Well, people are fantasizers. I also like it when they start claiming that angels were seen in space. They fly with wings and so on. All this, such kind of stuff. And Earth rests on the 3 whales.
By the way, it's interesting that in early Christianity, already after Jesus, during the first centuries, even in the artistic images, an angel was not depicted with wings. He was depicted as a simple human.
Naturally, because there was understanding, there was knowledge, while wings are already a later addition. They already added them later in their explanations. And the hierarchy was also drawn by people not so long ago. And names were invented, and the funniest thing is that not a single name matches. They have different names, but every angel has a name, because it is individual, even in boundless spiritual world. I'm just saying once again, there's no hierarchy there. There is responsibility, but there is no hierarchy.
The greatest among those who serves more is what you said in the video, meaning...
Yes, of course, certainly. It means responsibility. The one who serves the spiritual world takes a certain responsibility. Of course, other angels may be involved as well, let's say, in a certain action, but that doesn't mean that someone is superior there, someone is a general, someone is a soldier, no. Although angels, yes, they have an ability to develop to infinity.
But, Igor Mikhailovich, how would you comment on the following words of the Venerable Parthenopeus of Optina? This visible world will remain as long as their number increases, and then there will be the end. That is, it is somehow perceived by consciousness in two ways.
It is said here that people should become angels, and these angels, which are formed from people, go to the boundless world. And here it is turned upside down in order to justify angels, God, and a human. Somehow it's a little bit different, so it had to be justified somehow. Yes, there were angels, 1/3 of the angels fell and separated. That's why God created people, in order to sort of restore the number of the fallen angels. Well, it has to be equal to a certain number, according to their idea. That's why 1/3 of these angels will be gathered from people, and that's it, and then this world is not needed, meaning it will cease to exist. Well, that's how this Venerable interprets God's plan.
Yet, what is it in reality?
In reality, when angels cease to come out of this world, then it will be the end of this world. And how many times was this world on the verge? After all, every search of the Satanism, it cannot be called otherwise. It exactly brought to the coming of prophets, right? They renewed the knowledge which contributed to the emergence of angels, and humanity gained 1,000 more years, or a couple of thousand, to continue living. That's how it is.
There is also such a belief that a human cannot become an angel. Allegedly, it is not written in the Bible about this, but it is said that God created both a human and an angel at once, meaning it turns out that angels were created even before the creation of a human, before the creation of Adam and Eve. And actually, if there is such a story that there were angels who became the fallen angels, and there were angels who stood their ground and didn't go with Satan, and became the saint angels, then this fact speaks about angels already being in the spiritual world, meaning that angels were created originally by God.
Yet who is God? Well, simply,
Love.
we understand that. But who is He? So God is unity, He is one.
Many in unity and one.
Yet God, yes, and now you said the truth. He is many, in unity and one in many. The spiritual world, this is who God is. The entire spiritual world, in total, is nothing other than God Himself. Well, what does the spiritual world consist of?
Of angels of love, as it turns out.
Or who does it consist of, so to say? Of what? Of love. And of whom? Of angels. However, if there were no angels, there would be no spiritual world either. And if there was no spiritual world, there wouldn't be God. Right? So this is very simple. But a human is so important, and the devil has whispered to him to such an extent that a human started to believe all this. Can you imagine what egoists we people are? To be honest, it's just scary to think that we exalted ourselves to such an extent that God created a human, created angels for him and the like. I also heard in other religions that angels were created to serve people. There were such things too. Actually, people are needed precisely for angels to emerge. But it doesn't mean that angels are born owing to people.
So the statement that angels are created by God applies to the fact that a human can become an angel as well, right? Meaning this...
That's the point, for a human to become an angel. There's no other purpose for a human. All the rest is made up and whispered. This is already, pardon me, a product of our mind, where we set some goals and tasks for ourselves. There is the highest purpose of a human. The ultimate purpose of a human is to become an angel. And an even higher purpose, as it is said, as they say, there is the highest point and there is even higher one, is service to the spiritual world. That's the point. Well, if we take... Well, because people will think that angels emerge only from people, say humanity or human-like beings have always existed and they are everywhere. Even in our galaxy there are so many. Well, one day science will come to this. Although science is very afraid, especially religions are afraid that it will be confirmed that there is life somewhere on the nearest planets, otherwise everything is... all these fairy tales break down, because everything falls into place. And if there are intelligent ones, it's a real problem, right? Although one might think that humanity has never encountered extraterrestrial intelligent life, right? It's funny, such proudlings. But if we take the spiritual world, angels cannot multiply. They are genderless beings. And naturally, the spiritual world enlarges because of angels that come from nowhere, meaning from material universes. And in these material universes, like on our earth, like us people, angels emerge. And every angel that comes is joy for the entire spiritual world. And they constantly increase in numbers, that's why there is always joy there. Yet there have also been original angels, meaning unborn and uncreated, who have always been. And there are quite a lot of them. That is, the spiritual world has always existed, and despite all the infinity, it is constantly expanding. They say, a question might arise, where is it expanding to? That's how our consciousness works. It is constantly replenished.
You said that angels constantly increase in number.
Of course.
And this relates to joy. It's interesting that Jesus Christ also said that angels rejoice, that they constantly rejoice, and they rejoice even for every sinner turned to God.
For every angel, for every human who became an angel. That's where the essence of his words was. When, excuse me, an ordinary person, an ordinary sinful human as they say, becomes an angel, this brings joy to everyone, to the entire angelic world, let's put it this way, to the entire spiritual world.
Meaning the spiritual world is expanding at that moment, a kind of a surge.
Well, in human understanding, it has nowhere to expand, because it is everything. So, inside of it all, there arise, well, speaking our language, not the existing, but the phantom, imaginary, worlds in which the living, true angels are born. Such a product of an angel's fantasy.
It is also very interesting about what is mentioned in the Bible and the Quran regarding, let's say, the tasks of angels. In the Bible it is said, "Are they not all ministering spirits sent forth to do service for the sake of them that shall inherit salvation?" In the Quran, Surah 33, Ayah 43, it is said, "He it is who sends blessings on you, as do His angels, that He may bring you out from the depths of darkness into light." That is, angels are extremely interested in people's salvation.
Not so extremely as people may think. A human being is given freedom. If angels were extremely interested, then freedom wouldn't be given, but then angels wouldn't be born. An angel is a conscious choice. It is, let's say, those personalities who manage to step over the devil and come to God. That's the point. That's the point of these programs. I mean, that very devil, demons, genies, and everyone else, whatever we call them, they also have a purpose of their existence. They are a temptation, they are an obstacle, but that's where the whole point is. That a human needs to understand who he is and liberate himself from these yearnings which are artificially imposed on him by demons to such an extent as to become alive, to become free. He needs to come to love the spiritual world to such an extent as to become a part of it. Then a human being gains life, then he gains everything. There are many fantasies in this world as well. And again, but you see what else worked here? If we take historical examples, antediluvian times, namely when Atlantis was destroyed, a lot of knowledge was preserved. I mean, there remained Atlanteans, as well as people who survived, and then formed Hyperborea and a civilization when Eden was built, and so on. After all, the knowledge remained, and it was partly recorded somewhere and partly transmitted. And it turns out that this knowledge was later retold and interpreted by people in their own way, and so it has served as such fairy tales and stories that 1/3 fell or fell away and the like. Again, who were actually called angels? Well, not angels, but messengers. Yet who had such angelic power on earth? Again, those were else messengers. And who was in God's army? After all, we know from history regarding Atlantis that precisely El appointed himself a supreme god, and he appointed his children gods over nations, giving them power, and his messengers were in the status of angels' representatives, and he had his own so-called God's army, which consisted solely of angels, so to speak. Why else were they elevated? First of all, they were technically superior to everyone. This was actually even many times more powerful than today. They possessed technology that was, let's say, serious. At the time when his children and nations did not possess it, they were more primitive. Well, degradation was already underway, and the time was coming to an end. Hence it turns out that his God's angelic army was the most powerful. His children were gods. They were a part of that very, let's say,
Assembly of gods.
Assembly of gods, yes. It exactly consisted of his children. History preserved it all. If you look at it with your eyes open, everything falls into place. But how it was later twisted by people for their own benefit, for the benefit of an ordinary, let's say, consumerist format, everything is simple.
Yes, that the sons of God came to the daughters of humans.
That's precisely.
Giants were born. The book of Enoch mentions it.
Yes, it was precisely them who came. In fact, we already talked about it. There is the video Atlantis, a lead in search of immortality. If our friends watched it, a lot is told about it there. Of course, there were genetic experiments and a lot more. This is confirmed as of today. There were giants and what not. And the Atlanteans are often confused with giants. No. The Atlanteans were, so to speak, else bureaucrats, civil servants. They were regarded as Atlanteans, meaning his messengers. But again, after the destruction of Atlantis, many still remained in this world, and they partly preserved this knowledge. There were a lot of records, a lot of everything. The technology was preserved. We also know that, why go far, that very Lhasa, such a library, let's say, that's stored. That's why Hitler in his time, and not only him, but many people from other countries tried to buy it, or whatever. And they actually got a lot of knowledge from there. Real knowledge. That which we use today. Technologically. Construction of those very rockets and a lot more. That's a fact, which is already publicly available and well known. a lot of various gadgets and everything else, video cameras, many things. These are ordinary.
Does it mean it was Shambhala's knowledge there, no?
No, it's not Shambhala's knowledge. No, well, what does Shambhala have to do with that? As for Shambhala, it's more spiritual. This is more serious, while that one is an ordinary library. Let's say what had remained and survived after the Atlanteans was stored in one place. And certain people were appointed by the ones you've mentioned. They were faithful, they were obedient. And they were appointed as custodians of this library. And later, you know, pridefulness, they exalted themselves. They called themselves almost rulers of some sort, men of secret knowledge, and so on. And then they reached the point when they started selling that knowledge. Well, it's no secret. When caravans loaded with gold came to them, from that very Hitler, and not only him, and they were paid for papers. So what? In your opinion, my friends, were they so stupid? Those representatives of the Ananurbi, that they brought caravans with gold to get a pair of ancient parchments? No, not stupid. That's how it all developed.
Regarding the story about the fallen angels, the 200 sons of God came down to earth, to the daughters of humans, and giants were born from them. And basically, after that, the world became so full of pridefulness that the flood followed, meaning that...
Well, you see, again, an interpretation of reality. When we already said, well, let's repeat, when El endowed his children with domains and appointed them gods, let's say about those people, experiments started, those very genetic experiments and the like. After all, before that time, people had no differences. But when did all this start? Exactly at those times. There came to be, excuse me, white and black people, yellow and red ones. There came to be, let's say, smarter, stronger, physically more resilient ones. There were giants and there were some rather strange creatures too. Again, why? Because when the children got bored, they started fighting and having fun, killing people. And up to this day, some people are having fun like that. So, having started wars with each other, it's like chess games. They wanted to strengthen their warriors. Since they couldn't develop technologically because El forbade them, as it would be a direct threat to his power. And it's clear that they had nothing sacred, and each of his children would strive to take his place, right? That's why they were not allowed to develop technologically, meaning to arm themselves or anything else. But they were developing, let's say, skills and breeding their people more enduring, more cunning and more crafty. Well, that's how it was played. This is true.
So the fallen angels are the ones who were at the times of El, right? I mean...
Absolutely right. History has preserved that. Those were messengers, they were before God, but they did such godless deeds. So later on, in order to smooth it out somehow, they were called fallen. And then again they say 1/3. It is believed that 1/3 of his bureaucrats kind of survived the flood because they were outside Atlantis, and after the destruction they kind of survived. That's where all the fairy tales and legends come from, only remade and twisted by people. There are a lot of interesting things. Again, concerning those very technologies, well, if we take the way El ruled, after all, he saw everyone. This is interesting too.
The fact that God sees every human.
Of course. That's where the legend comes from, that God sees everyone. And this took root in everyone. He's God, He sees everyone, He knows everything. Well, this came from El. In fact, God sees a human. If we take reality only when he begins to live, that's when he is manifested in the spiritual world. He manifests himself from the illusory world into reality. That's when everyone rejoices.
And what were these technologies, if we may...
The all-seeing eye of God. Look, there is a drawn eye often depicted on a pyramid.
Yes.
What does it mean?
The all-seeing eye of God.
Absolutely right. Where did this come from? And look, it's interesting. Freemasons have it, Shambhala has it, and let's say it's the same thing that seems to be exactly the opposite. But in fact, it's all the same. And we are touching upon an interesting point. Well, let's talk about it. Basically, some of our friends already know it. This is such sort of information. By the way, there is information about it in Lhasa as well. And the funniest thing is that when they try to sell it to them, there is a mention of it in records. Of the Ananurbi representatives who had visited this Lhasa, who had bought documents from them, let's say technical ones, owing to which a rocket and later a nuclear bomb were built and everything else. Well, they say it was scientists who invented that. Of course, we're not arguing. Of course, scientists. It took them a long time to decipher the ancient documents. But the push was given from there. And everything that they obtained, they later implemented, while this document they rejected. A high price was asked for it, but it wasn't so technically clear. It is precisely about the all-seeing eye of God, let's say. That's what El used. El really saw every person and could differentiate who was where. It's a technological device. It is based on the fact that I emphasize not consciousness, but...
Not microchipping.
No, it's not microchipping. It has nothing to do with microchips or anything that people are afraid of. Actually, our neural group, meaning our brain, is arranged very interestingly. We understand that it has an electromagnetic nature, that it produces some kind of radiation. We make encephalograms and many other things, but it also produces another special radiation. Many of our friends, and we as well, know about the pyramid experiments that we conducted at Allat. What were they based on?
Transmission of an image or sensuous.
Transmission, yes, either sensuous or an image was transmitted from a distance and the like. Those were experiments in which thousands of people around the world took part. What was going on? A person formed an image in her consciousness and transmitted it, and people perceived it. I mean, nobody can deny this experiment because it was conducted repeatedly, and people all over the world were involved. Let's say it's a very successful experiment, and it's actual, it's real. But what did it show? It showed that a person can... Yes, we created certain conditions, because certain conditions contribute to the fact that a person, by his thought, by forming, for example, a certain number or a certain image, can transmit it directly to the brain of other people, to the brain, I emphasize. From there, from the brain, it comes to consciousness as an image, and a person perceives it as his number, meaning he sees it. Where does visualization of the image take place? In the neural group. So, if we learn, as they say, to read thoughts, we will see only images. Well, to read thoughts by controlling the neural group, we will see only images that are transmitted and nothing more. We won't be able to see thoughts. Why? Because that's how it works. It's a mechanism, it's a transmission. It transmits certain images, pictures, and everything else, and it turns out that this picture can be transmitted. Even transmissions through feelings is again connected with the neural group. Again, what is it detected by? By our brain, which is then read by our primary consciousness. And from here it arises as our desire. In other words, a picture has originated. And this transmission of information is not a result of, let's say, radiations that we perceive on the EEG. It occurs by means of a different radiation. People like Pavlov, Bechterew, and many others knew about this radiation. They have references to this surge and the like, so they knew and understood that it exists. It was clearly told about it exactly in ancient sources, that which we mentioned, meaning, but this radiation is not detected by our modern, let's say, devices yet. However, if we approach physics from another perspective, it all appears to be easy. What does it turn out to be? It turns out that every person, meaning the work of our neural group or our brain, is like a colorful light bulb in the darkness. I mean, it is visible. Or, let's put it in words, closer to the beginning of the last century. They say it's like a flash of bright, colorful light in ether. This series of colorful flashes, even a person can be identified by these colors. I mean, why? It turns out that this color, emitted by our brain, is individual for everyone, like a fingerprint, cornea, DNA, and the like. And it turns out that by this or that color's intensity one can judge what state a person is in at the moment, whether he is healthy, sick, worried, or something else. Well, these are details, of course. Nevertheless, it all shows not only where exactly a person is, but it also shows in what state he is, in a state of excitement, rest, sleep. Even in his sleep, a person continues to emit, he is visible, but it's clear that the person is sleeping, and so on. By the way, based on this, let's see how sleepers work. Well, we are now slightly touching upon metaphysics, excuse me, friends. But it is true. There's a lot of fiction about sleepers, that he sees with your eyes, he gets connected or something else. The main function of sleepers was to find people. I mean, how did they see? Those who really had these abilities, and rather developed ones, they could clearly, by knowing the image, it was enough to have a picture of this person. Why picture? Because a picture, pardon me, even the initial, the first black and white photos also captured the imprint of a person, but is invisible with the naked eye. Yet when a person is able to perceive this, for instance, there are people who are able to perceive fluctuations of even thousandths or nearly millionths of degrees, meaning to distinguish such shades. These are the abilities that a person has to see what ordinary people don't see. Then, from this photo, by seeing this imprint, people could easily find where this person is at the moment. But such people also have an ability, let's say, to read the terrain, sort of a geographic location like GPS, you know? Like a navigator. In other words, they could see not only where a person was, but also could navigate by space. In what place, that is, by geographical location, well, it's really, these are facts, facts from life. So, what is also interesting, when we carried out experiments, many friends remember that it is possible to shield the transmission of thoughts. We even conducted such things when there was a special chamber and a transmission, let's say, of that very number didn't take place. Why? Because that which is formed in neurons is, let's say, of an electromagnetic nature. In order to shield it, an ordinary foil was enough. I mean, a screen made of foil, and that's all. A person can no longer transmit his order or command, well, let's say, convey an image to others. However, it's impossible to shield this light coming from and radiated by the neural group. In no way and nowhere, no matter where a person is, and under what conditions, he will still be visible, meaning he is still perceived. So this way, El controlled the whole world in his time, because he saw everyone's location, and it is clear that there was communication as well, and there was everything. So he could control even battles, specifically giving commands to one or another person. That certainly exalted El. How come? How can a human, the all-seeing God, he sees everything? Hence there was his omnipresent gaze of this. The omnipresent eye was drawn there, which sees everything and knows everything. It is interesting that, after the destruction of Atlantis, this device, or let's put it so, these abilities, were used when the ideal society was built, meaning when the first Hyperborea was established. There are many legends and fairy tales about it as well. They are twisted, but it doesn't matter. When the ideal society was created and purified, all the followers of the Atlanteans, those fallen angels, were forbidden to live on Earth. All of them lived underground. This is really so. And this is confirmed historically. There are plenty of cities and tunnels that connect the whole world underground. And they didn't have the right to come out to the surface. But they were allowed to live underground. They were taken pity on. Yet, their every step was controlled. I mean, everyone was visible wherever they were. This indicates that this kind of radiation, I'm saying once again, it's impossible to block it in any way. Wherever a person is, this light radiated by our brain is visible. At the ocean bottom and in any cave. This is really so.
Thus, technology was used against themselves, as it turns out.
Well, yes, technology is technology. It develops from time to time, and then disappears, and this is not a fairy tale. It sounds like fiction. But the fact remains, hence it turns out that both have one and the same image, let's say, on different sides of the coin. Well, this is interesting.
Very interesting. So caps made of foil won't help to get shielded, will they?
No, the caps. There's a nuance here. In order to, let's say, even transmit or block this image, not just a cap is needed, but a person must be placed in a cocoon of foil. Moreover, if there is a little slit, the image enters. There's a nuance here as well, but if there's no slit, that's it doesn't enter. The shield works. Therefore, caps, my friends, like those which many play with on YouTube, they're pointless, they won't help. Kind of a shroud is needed. Nonetheless, I'm just saying, we experimented, we carried out these experiments, but again, the signal is blocked, while the radiation isn't. I mean, it still remains visible. It's impossible to remove it.
This is so interesting, such a clear understanding that the fairy tale ceases to be a fairy tale.
Well, this is again, what fairy tales? We should look at this reasonably. We should look at that very history with open eyes and simply understand human greediness, insatiability, and consumerist format. Well, everything falls into place. Hence the story of fallen angels. Everything is twisted. Again, in which direction did they twist it all? To please themselves, in order to earn profit again, to climb on people's necks and fool them, telling them fairy tales. But in the same way, they restrained them. Because they served Satan, they didn't serve the spiritual world. I mean those fantasizers who made up fairy tales about angels and everything else. And what did it lead to?
To people's total lack of understanding.
Well, one has earned 10 cents, but then, so personality will tumble till the end of time. By the way, regarding the underground hell, it is also a consequence of those very Atlanteans who, well, the rest of the Atlanteans who were driven underground. Hence, there's again an understanding that when a happy world of equality and love ended due to certain reasons, and this consumerist format started emerging naturally, the descendants of Atlanteans came out from underground. They gained power, and many things still develop according to those laws since that time. Thus, if we look at history, we can see what an outburst of cruelty, evil, and everything else took place. Such a human-hating order was formed. This is also true. Everything is visible, everything's available. Despite the fact that history was altered and many things were destroyed, you can't destroy everything. And again, it's even enough for any clever person to look at why they destroy everything that is found even today. So many historical valuables have been destroyed which told about the primordial knowledge and the spiritual path, about the true spiritual path, that which is exactly based not on fantasies of some mediators and priests, but real facts. They were destroying it to the last piece. I wonder why did they spend so much money and everything else, arranged whole wars and all the rest? Why incur such losses? Just in order to amuse themselves? They're simply afraid.
And if we talk about angels in the true meaning, Igor Mikhailovich, It is interesting that it is said about them that they constantly see God and praise Him tirelessly. It is said in the Gospel of Matthew that they always see the face of my Father who is in heaven, or in the Holy Quran, in Surah 21, it is said that they are not prevented by arrogance from His worship, nor do they tire. They exalt Him night and day and do not slacken. How to understand that?
Well, if we look at it from the point of view of a human, of ordinary human consciousness, that's nonsense, isn't it? How are they doing that from morning till night? Especially considering that angels don't have the function of sleep, because there is no consciousness. And how can it be that day and night the only thing they do is praising and glorifying God tirelessly? What is it in our understanding? It's a beautiful lie. When we engage in toadying and begin to sing songs to someone who does not deserve it in order to get what we don't deserve.
We please, yes.
Isn't that so? That is where our lack of understanding comes from. Yet when we put earthly things aside, this is exactly that infinite love and joy. And when a person, especially now, we have our friends, companions who have managed to feel it, but there are those who feel the spiritual world really well. So, those ones precisely understand what it means tirelessly. Let's put it this way, it doesn't mean singing odes to God and praising Him. This is love, this is joy, it's joy that you share. It's difficult to convey it in human language so that a person could understand it with the help of ordinary consciousness. It's a different world, it's a different life. Surely consciousness will say, but this is a boring life. How's that? What about fighting, bickering, stealing something, or tricking somebody? How about that? After all, that's what our whole life is all about. A hustle. What about rest after all? Rest from what? From love? This state of life just doesn't match with consciousness. If we translate this into human understanding, an angel's world or an angel's life is creation after all. This is love and constant creation. It is when something beautiful is being made, it is being created, when an angel, possessing power, creates what gladdens others. And it's an incessant process. There's no sadness, there are no shadows. This is different. It is definitely not what is described by, let's say, mediators. 600 wings and the like. And they are only busy chasing a human and trying to please him because God ordered so.
Yet, there are still grains in religions regarding the fact that angelic nature is the light, that they are created from light, or that angelic nature is fire and joy.
This is different. This is immaterial. And again, personality and human soul are also different. Although personality is both, it is reflected. Since it is reflected in the septon mirrors, as they say, it already exists. It is half existing and half not. And the whole purpose of a human being is exactly to unite with the soul as a personality, to become an angel, to beget an angel, to become alive. That's the purpose of human existence. But it's not listening to Satan and pleasing him, right? Again, when a human starts living by the spiritual world, when this love awakens in him, when he as human, as personality, feels the spiritual world, because the soul is nothing other than a part of the spiritual world constantly connected with it, and generation of this love, emergence of this most true life, which fills a human up with a huge power that gives him this true life, precisely gives him an opportunity, as the last prophet said, peace be upon him. This gives him such a power with which he can even make a Muslim of a demon. I mean, in what sense? To make these actors in the head, these demons, sing odes to God, to make them love Him and serve Him. After all, this is really so. By not admitting negativity into your consciousness, but accepting only what you need as personality, you understand that it's easy to do. By the fact that you feed these demons, you are food for them, nothing else, and without food, they are nothing. Thus, by giving or not giving them food, you can control the processes of their work and activeness. When you give them attention, only when they serve God, when they do good and tell you about the good, but you absolutely don't finance anything evil and bad that they slip to you, then excuse me, the world inside you is changing. This is really so. Yes, it's possible to express it in earthly language that they constantly praise God, as they say. But if he deserves it, why not? Well, how can one not praise God?
It is interesting that you also mentioned the Prophet. Indeed, there is a hadith where it is told that the Prophet Muhammad said that there is a jinn in everyone, and he was asked, "Do you have a jinn too?"
Of course.
And he said, "Me too, but Allah has helped me and He has submitted, so that He only helps me to do good."
Of course.
So here,
It should be even forced to serve God and love God. Well, it's clear that anyway, you know,
what does it mean?
it's like a wild beast.
What does it mean to subdue this shaitan? And what does it mean that exactly Allah helped to do that?
A person won't have strength to subdue it and make it love. But again, everything arises from a person's actions. When he as personality starts sending his love to the soul, meaning he directs most of his attention of that power of life which is given to him and of time to God's love, he receives a lot more. Receiving a lot more, he gives it back. Thus, he increases his inner power to such an extent that he becomes freer, more and more free from the dictatorship of this jinn, this Satan in his head, or whatever we call it. Then the person gains individuality. He realizes that he is personality. The first point is, who are you? That's exactly this essence. When you realize who you are, that you are not these thoughts in the head which change 30 times, and you're not masks which Shaitan puts on you. No, you're different. You are personality. You're the one who has always observed this with sadness, craving for something different. But now, you're not sad. You don't just crave, but you act, right? And this is totally different. You act in order to unite with your family, in order to return home, to the source. But to return as an equal, to return as an angel, this is totally different. And at that point, this power is given to you. By means of this power, you gain freedom, while freedom is nothing other than, again, speaking simple language, a power over demons. And just look how all this is being twisted. You see, it turns out that one Satan wants to have power over another one, right? Well, I proceed from these very interpretations of those mediators. Well, what actually happens? You gain power over the demon in your head. Why? Because you have the right to decide what he should do, and he will do that. Well, he certainly resists for a while. He trades conditions or something else, trying to conclude a deal with you, hence a deal with the devil or and everything else. The system can do many things. It can give you many illusions, but they will be temporary, and they are worthless. They're nothing. And again, is it really possible to exchange God's love, life, for any material illusion of this kind, whatever illusion is given to you here? Even if you become a king of all kings, so what? It's like a bug. Do you remember that chamomile, which we talked about? Well, let's remind our friends, in one of our videos, Tatiana and I, while discussing similar topics, I said, imagine a chamomile. She said, I have imagined it. Now imagine a bug, a ladybird on it. So she imagined it, and thus she gave it life. And as long as she was seeing it in her head, it was a whole universe. And it really existed. Why? Because it is material. It's an image, and an image does exist. And that bug was alive, and the chamomile existed, right? Right. So is our world. For the spiritual world, guys. Well, but this bug, I mean we as a bug, we can really become a a part of the spiritual world, and turn from nothing into something, not merely into dust. We consist of this dust. I mean, our bodies, right? A part of universes is within us. And we will leave and again become a part of somebody, our bodies. And here is important who we will be, a subpersonality or an angel. Will we be in suffering like now, only in a much increased one? Or will we become those who create worlds? What is better, to live in love and joy and to create, or to miserably exist as subpersonality? And here's the freedom of a person's choice. And God doesn't dictate to him. God gives him life and gives him a chance to become even an angel, a part of the spiritual world. Why? Because a part of the spiritual world enters everyone since their birth. Doesn't it? It does. And that's already a helping hand. You should just take it and not let go, and everything will be fine. Right?
Igor Mikhailovich, how to become an angel? This is the main question which...
This is very easy. I'll put it this way. It's much more difficult to become a subpersonality. That's true. In order to become a subpersonality, it's necessary to work very hard. It's necessary to hate many people. It's necessary to apply plenty of effort, to cultivate hatred in oneself, to worry, to suffer. Well, so as to suffer and worry afterwards. While in order to become an angel, it's necessary simply to stop serving Satan and start serving God, to start loving each other. Is this really difficult? In my opinion, it's very simple, isn't it? My friends, you should love each other and love God, and you should become free. Everything is very simple.
Should an angel be developed in oneself, or does an angel already live in every person?
No, an angel. An angel is an integral and immortal being. Having become an angel, a person becomes free. He will never fall and will never betray God. And here, I will digress. People say, can an angel fall? Never, my friends. Let me give you a simple example. Well, we have just talked about the chamomile. You remember, don't you? The one which Tatiana once imagined. And she imagined a ladybird on it. So now imagine your happy life, full of love, joy, and everything else, and you exchange it for cleaning boots. I emphasize, boots on the feet of the bug imagined by Tatiana. Is that worth it? How can you exchange what is living and eternal? How can you exchange this love and this real life for a temporary illusion, for nothing, when you know that it's an illusion, that it is temporary? How can you exchange that, which is everything, for that which is nothing? That's exactly, let's say, written and told by these mediators, because they don't know the spiritual world. It is told that there are those angels who fall and so on, only by those who have never experienced God's love, who are as far from it as heaven from earth. I mean, those who didn't understand and didn't know, it's only them who can make this up, for they live by the earthly. For them, deception, lies, let's say, and pleasing their bodies and stomachs are exactly their entire lot. That's what life is for them. Well, to serve dust is the lot of dust. Isn't that so?
Igor Mikhailovich, what kind of conditions should be created in society which would favor the emergence of angels in this world?
Everything is actually simple. In order for a mass of angels to emerge in this world, an ideal society, an Eden is needed. All of us just need to build an Eden, that which was here For thousands of years, it is possible to restore everything because everything was here. We can just recall what all of us have forgotten. We were forced to forget it, but we haven't forgotten it. We remember it. Deep inside, everyone knows and understands it. Simply, I think that people should stop serving Satan and should recall who they are, recall their nature, what we are here for, and really build an Eden. These are the conditions under which people will really become angels. These are the conditions under which the spiritual world will love and protect our entire world. These are the conditions under which preservation of humanity will be guaranteed. And this world will exist for as long as angels emerge. This is what is said in the Holy Scriptures. Yes, in an allegorical and altered form, but this is true. And in order for us to build this Eden, this ideal society, we should first build a creative society, abandon the consumerist format, stop being beasts to each other, stop being enemies to one another, and become humans, and start loving each other. This is very simple. There's nothing difficult about it, right? So, my friends, let's begin with something simple. Let's start loving each other. Thank you for being with us. Thank you. Thank you.
Thank you.
Thank you.
Thank you.